This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. We are here at the Consumer Electronics Show, as we've done every year now for a number of years. And this is going to be a whole series of interviews you'll be hearing throughout the next handful of weeks. And this one we're actually doing a little bit differently. We're not in the mobile studio. We're actually doing this sitting in a hotel room down from the Strip because it's too crazy today to try to do anything over near CES. But I've got a special guest here who's actually here to participate in the Cable Labs Innovation Showcase later on today. But I'm going to let him give a little bit of background on himself and his company, and then we'll have a discussion about what they're doing and how they're doing it and what they see the future coming. So, David Erickson, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So give us a little background on yourself. I know you've been with the company you're with. It's been, 5 years now? But give us a little bit of context of your history.
Yeah, so I did an undergraduate at the University of Utah in computer science and networking. And actually, I got into networking as a kid, playing Doom and Descent over modems, actually using IPX emulation on bulletin boards back in the early 90s. And spent a lot of years trying to optimize that connection and get low latency and be able to get everybody else and win. So that kind of built up a passion for networking in me. I went into that in college, and then I was fortunate to be able to come out to Silicon Valley and do a master's and ultimately a PhD at Stanford in Nick McEwen's group there, which is kind of the birthplace of software-defined networking. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I know the guys up at Stanford. Actually, I do a guest lecture for the D School every year, an innovation masterclass. Great program. So give us a little context of the problem that you were looking at when you came up with the idea.
Yeah, so while we were at Stanford working on software-defined networking, we spent most of our time really focused on kind of the controller, orchestrator ways of doing networking and how to make changes there. We created a ton of innovation, really got the snowball moving down the hill there, and obviously, a variety of companies are selling fantastic products based on that today. When we graduated sort of towards the tail end of our time there, we realized that we'd spent so much time focusing on that, but there was this massive operational component that nobody had really innovated on in a big way, we felt anyway, in the last couple of decades. And there were a number of point solutions and people were trying to make some progress there, but there wasn't a step function level of improvement. And we recognized that my co-founder, Payman, had created some technology and some algorithms called header space analysis that allow you to basically replicate production networks in software with an incredible level of fidelity. And that allowed us to take that technology, apply it in the operation space, and we could just see that there was a huge opportunity to make an order of magnitude level improvement there.
With a lot of innovation, though, were the customers out there knowing they had a problem, or was it they didn't know they had the problem until they saw the solution?
That's a funny question. So I actually have a funny anecdote for you. So very early on in the company's existence, we'd put together, proof of concept internally or MVP of the product. And we took this to one of the very large telcos research labs and said, hey, look what we can do. We think this would be really useful and apply to you guys. And they said, I'm sorry, we don't believe that you can actually do this because we've been trying to do this for 15 years and couldn't, and we really want it, but we just don't believe it. And so that was kind of a key point for us in realizing that a lot of people knew this was a problem, had been trying to solve it for a very long time, and we had the technology to actually make it happen. So when we put this in front of folks now, they very quickly connect that this is a problem they have and that they need a solution, and then they dive in very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting when you run into the people who say, well, we've been trying this for 15 years and haven't been able to come up with a solution. What was the unique perspective? What was it that you saw that the people who've been trying to do this in the past didn't see?
I think it's actually the confluence of a couple of things. So one of course is these algorithms that Payman created. They enable you to do things that you could not ever do before. The problem had not been solved in a manner that was complete and rigorous and actually tractable given the size and scale of these modern networks. But then two, at the same time, it's also really the proliferation of compute power, right? Having the cloud and effectively infinite CPU and memory at your fingertips, as well as all of the technologies that allow you to scale this out to multiple machines, have enabled us to solve tremendously large problems in timescales that humans need to be efficient, right? Like when I have a question about my network, I need to get an answer immediately. I don't want to wait for a batch process to run for 12, 14, 18 hours to be able to get back to me. Like that's just a very different method of operation that can't solve the caliber of problems that we're after.
Yeah, you talked before about the radical step function increase in fidelity. Give us some context of how big of a step function that really is. Is it I can't, I'm doing node levels. I'm not doing to device levels. How many devices? Give us some context of how big of a step function this really is.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an anecdote. One of our customers has a few thousand network devices. These are switches, routers, load balancers, firewalls, not edge servers. And when you part of our technology will actually create a copy of this network and software, and then we will explore where every possible packet could ever go in this environment, which is a superset of the standard packet capture and sampling that people are used to. But when we actually explore this customer's network, there are 5 octillion different ways for traffic to flow in this environment. You may not be familiar with that number. I was not when I saw it. It's a 5 followed by 27 zeros. And just to put some context in that, that's multiple orders of magnitude larger than the number of grains of sand on planet Earth, and on par with the number of expected stars in the known universe. So if you have humans that are trying to prove the security properties of this network, or even just the connectivity to ensure that all of the sites that you need connected, the apps that you need connected are always connected, you have no hope of doing that unless you've got incredibly smart software that can A, explore that, and then B, actually prove properties of it for you.
So in this case, is it simply from an analysis perspective, or is it also monitoring these networks to this kind of granularity?
Yeah, great question. Today, as a company, we focus exclusively on the analytics and providing sort of read-only type value to you. It's a little bit akin, if you're familiar with the software development lifecycle. There's a step called unit testing, where people write some code and then they write unit tests to ensure that the code actually does what you expect. And then also, as you move forward through time and you're changing code, you don't break somebody else's that you didn't have visibility into. So similar to networks, we go and explore all of these paths. We allow you to provide the unit tests in quotes that define what a working network is for you from a connectivity and a security perspective. And then we do this on an ongoing basis. So you will recollect from the network at whatever interval matches your business needs, whether this is minutes, hours, days. I mean, it's up to you on how often you want to look at it.
So what are the questions that the customers are trying to answer? You've done the analytics, but what's the real question they're trying to get an answer to?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple quick examples. So one is I have these very mission critical business applications, right? Like an anecdote we heard from one of our customers was that their payment system, their tax system actually lost connectivity, and so nobody could ring up an invoice because the tax computation part could not be done. And so ensuring that all of your mission critical applications are both connected the way they need to be, have the levels of redundancy that you want. Another example is security segmentation, ensuring your network is actually segmented as desired. But a super common one is just on a day-to-day basis, simply show me how traffic goes from point A to point B in my network. This may traverse tens of devices across a variety of vendors and syntaxes. and can take anywhere from minutes to tens of minutes to hours to actually get a fully detailed answer on. And we make that instant in Google timescales.
So when we come back, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to pick up this conversation because I'm going to throw out an analogy, and you're probably going to barf all over it, which is you're basically talking about a trace route on like mega steroids. So we're going to come back. We'll pick up that part of the conversation. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. We are here at the Consumer Electronics Show 2019 here in Las Vegas, and we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with David Erickson, talking about their work as a result of, sounds like the work that you were doing at Stanford with your other partners in this. So talk a little bit about the experiences that you've seen, kind of how customers are actually using this, the kind of the problems that they're seeing, and how that this actually applies to them.
Absolutely. Well, one of those is the analogy that you used earlier of a trace route on steroids. So we have an application called Search within our product that has search and textual search all across the inventory aspect of the product, but also the behavioral aspect. And so you're exactly right. When someone does a search from point A to point B in the network to find out how, for example, maybe there's SIP traffic or something flows between there, they'll probably use traceroute and ping to start with, and that'll get them some visibility into the layer 3 devices, but they don't get visibility into anything that's layer 2, into underlays if they're traversing an overlay, into what's going on inside the firewalls. And we have all of that visibility. So for every single device or virtual device that touches those packets, we'll tell you not only what it comes in and out, like ports on there, but also what are the processing stages internally. What are the lines of configuration, the rules it's hitting, everything. So there is no finer grain level of visibility than we can provide for that particular use case. And so we see folks love that. Other key ones that we have are API. Because we are creating this model or digital twin copy of the network, we can expose a standardized version of all of the configuration and state that these devices have. And people love to pull that in. Typically, the large networking companies have their own software that they've created in-house as kind of hacks to get around and solve some of these problems. And they see us as being able to replace all of that collection and underlying layer and then build up on top of it, which is fantastic. And then the other critical one, of course, is verification. So proving correctness properties of connectivity and security of their environment. So ensuring, as an example, that your security zone is completely isolated from your inside zones, like maybe dev, or dev's isolated from production, or if you're a multi-tenant provider, ensuring your Coke and Pepsi tenants can't talk. Mm-hmm. So sort of key validation of mission critical properties of your environment.
So what's next for the product? I mean, you're talking about ultimate visibility. So the challenge at least I would have is okay, great. That's a heck of a lot of data to have to kind of wade through to try to understand and validate against what my network actually is doing. But as you said, though, this data is kind of it's on the analysis side. Post, you capture the information about the network, and then you can run this analysis against it. What's next? Where do you go with this kind of visibility in your product?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of different angles to go. So one we've recently gone is adding the cloud systems into our product. So we now have support for AWS. So if you've got an on-prem environment with either direct connect or VPN connections up to the cloud, we can pull in all of that data and allow you to see a holistic picture of everything, your whole hybrid environment. Other areas to go in the future are, today we're focused primarily on connectivity or absence of it from a security perspective. Obvious adjacent sets of data around performance and other things that we can bring into the platform. we feel like we have solved the core problems around really modeling and understanding your network, and everything else is sort of icing on the cake. It's bringing in and attaching that data to additional workflows that you have internally, providing guidance and assistance. We focused a lot of time on the user interface, which is apparent. Everyone that tends to use the product loves it. It's very refreshing. It's very modern. It makes, as you said, this enormous amount of data approachable and consumable by the average, network operator, which historically has been a problem. And there's a laundry list of products that have not been adopted, to a large extent because of ease of use was just not there. And I think just the last thing I'll add to that point is we've also focused tremendously on ensuring that there's little upkeep and maintenance that's needed by the user to keep this model up to date, because we've seen those fall out of date immediately, and then they're as good as your Visio diagram that's out of date the minute you make it.
Well, that's it, right? Because when I was a CIO at a public company, we used to jokingly say the best design of a data center is a man and a dog. The man's job is to feed the dog. The dog's job is to keep the man from touching the machines. Right? Because as soon as you allow a human in, something's going to change.
Yes.
And then it's like, well, what broke it? Oh, I didn't do anything. I didn't touch it.
Yes.
No changes. I didn't do any changes. Right. So talk a little bit about your company. You've been around for 5 years?
5 years, yeah. About a little over 40 people now. Completed 2 major rounds of funding.
Give people the name of the company. I don't think we've even said it yet.
Forward Networks.
And you're based in the Valley?
We are. We're in Palo Alto.
I'm sorry, I pity you. I escaped twice. I did in the early 80s, and I got out just recently, 6 years ago. So 40 people. Who are your big investors?
Andreessen Horowitz and DFJ.
Good old Mark.
Yes.
My one claim to fame is I actually rented Mark his first office space in Champaign, Illinois.
Wow.
So back in the old Mosaic days. Yeah, him and his cohorts got kicked off campus and needed some place to squat. So they squatted in my offices for a while. So, and then he ended up being on the HP board. Mm-hmm. So you got a good set of investors, 5 years. And it sounds like you got a good crop of customers. Talk about some of your customers here real quick.
We do, yeah. So, many of the logos are available on our website, but you can see we've got customers from the major verticals. So finance, of course, telcos and service providers, retail now, startups, a variety of others. I think like what we've seen is every network has the network operations challenges that we solve. And so anyone in the mid-sized company all the way up to the pinnacle of the, companies in the world have and need us, and we're working with them.
Oh. So we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, David, what I'd like to ask you to think about is you've kind of gone now through this, being a student, coming up with some of these ideas, putting them together, creating a company, and now you're 5 years into it. What I'd love to hear are the stories. If you could go back and give yourself advice from where you are today, things you learned that you wish you knew back when this whole thing started, what would those be? And share those with the listeners. So when we come back, we're going to continue our conversations and pick up our discussion on software-defined networking and geek out here a little bit. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. So David, you started this work when you were a student at Stanford and took kind of this algorithmic work from your partner and kind of turned it into this product, right? And then had to go out and raise money and secure first customers. One of the things that I'm always interested in hearing is kind of the story of the lessons learned, right? Because everybody's path through that is different. I've been fortunate. I did, listeners of the show know this. I did 13 startups before I got my first IPO. So, I don't know whether it's stupidity or perseverance. I'll attribute it to perseverance. But the path is never the same for two individuals or two companies. So give us a little bit of context of the actual process of knowing that you've got something and how you turn that into a company. And then at the end, I'd like to say for you to share, if you had an opportunity to go back and you could advise yourself 5 or 6 years ago, what advice would you have given yourself? So give us a little bit of background and context, though, of the actual how did it get to turning into Forward Networks and how that all came about.
Yeah, so myself and my 3 co-founders, we were all at Stanford doing PhDs, and we graduated. Well, we did completed our presentations and then our dissertations, and towards the end of 2013, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do next. We were looking around, individually at running, joining other companies, joining other startups. And we kind of started thinking maybe there's something to do here together. The 4 of us have sort of distinct backgrounds, skills. Even though we were all under this SDN umbrella, we had all done research in very different things. And we didn't necessarily converge on anything particularly right before we graduated, but we had an opportunity that came up where we could do some training on SDN. And so we actually formed a company and went and created SDN training materials and went talk to groups within a variety of networking companies all over the world. And we used that experience to learn what some of the challenges were that were out there and confirm some of the things that we thought but weren't, needed industry validation to verify. And so it's kind of the startup before the startup. We actually made some good money on that allowed us to, keep a roof over our heads that summer. And then after we had really felt good about the idea of Forward Networks, that's when we really committed and went and raised seed money in the fall. But I think it's critical to talk to your customers and also to have a decent idea of what the competition's doing and what they're focused on in your industry or target potential industry.
So you did the training materials over the summer, and then did the seed money come from angels, friends and family?
Yeah, it came from angels. So, a variety of professors, including our advisor, were kind enough to continue to invest in us beyond the time he'd already invested in us while we were grad students. So.
Okay. And then, so what was the time frame from the time you said, okay, we're going to go do Forward Networks to when you actually, had what you would call a viable product?
That's always the challenging question in software because it's an ever evolving product. 1 to 2 years in, we thought we had a product, and then looking back, we did not have a product at that point. So I think there's as a software startup, there's various stages. We had something people could use and try and poke around, but it certainly wasn't what I would have considered enterprise class a year or 2 in. I think realistically, it probably took us three something years to get to that point where it was enterprise grade, had enough features and functionality that we could meet customers' needs at scale.
And so what was the turning point? What was the hump that you had to get over? When you say it had to be enterprise grade, was it a feature set? Was it something else?
I think there's the standard features that you have to sell into enterprise companies around authentication and security and deployment method, right? Like one of the things that we learned is that we wanted to be a cloud-only SaaS company to begin with, and it turns out there's multiple verticals that are not okay with that, and so we had to build a product in that form factor that could be delivered to those types of customers, which ended up being some of our very first customers. So that was critical, and I think scale is a big one. We sort of hoped early on that customers would, by and large, come and get a small amount of our product first, deploy that, and then we would scale with them over time as they started to use it. But then we started encountering large companies that said, yeah, we'd like to actually take this to our whole network right now. And at that point in time, the product, just the technology was not completed to the point that we could do that and deliver it in a very quick time scale. And that it takes time to get there. This is an area, I gave you the example number earlier, that it takes an awful lot of incredibly smart people to create that type of product, and you can't rush it.
So, now you're 5 years, right, that you've been in now. You've had a number of lessons learned. So speaking to the audience today, if you could go back and speak to yourself, what would be kind of 2 or 3 pieces of quick advice you wish you knew when you started down this path?
Well, actually, it follows this train of discussion. So I think I was very overly optimistic on timescales for delivering some of these things. And it's like everybody's startup is a different mix of sort of hard algorithmic or IP or other related challenges that just take time versus execution versus, how long it takes to make the market aware of the product and go to the market and sell it and all of those things. In our particular point in the space, it's very technical, very hard algorithmically, and just took a long time to get that to the point that it was deliverable. And so if I could have talked to myself back then, I'd say, get ready to be patient, and you're not a super quick to market consumer style startup. This is a hard IP enterprise B2B play that's going to take time, and it's both in creating the product as well as in selling it, because if you're selling to large companies, as it takes time to get that done, especially in a new area that has never been seen before, right? You've got to train the market and teach them.
Yeah, it's actually one of the more common comments that a lot of people make, right? It is the patience, right? You think you've got the timeline figured out, and it never works to the timeline, no matter how good you think your planning is at this point. So as we wrap up this segment, if people want to track what Forward Networks is working on, what's the best place to keep up to date?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, www.forwardnetworks.com, we've got a blog that's linked up in the top corner that keeps up to date on interesting things we're doing, announcements, etc. We also have a Twitter handle that you can grab from there as well.
And then real quick, what's next for Forward Networks? I always have to ask the question.
Yeah, so more continued exciting announcements coming out of us from support of different devices that are out there, different areas of the network, customers. I think, look, we're determined to bring all of the innovation that has happened in the software development world to networking, to really improve the state of network operations, the cost, the agility, the uptime, and make it match what we expect from the other really successful areas of software development.
That's great. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join me here at CES. We'll see you later this afternoon as you stand up and pitch at the Innovation Showcase and see how you do in front of all the CEOs of my board. Get ready to be grilled. With this, we're going to wrap up this segment. Stay tuned. Segment 4 is coming up. It'll be a new episode of 5 Minutes to New Ideas. So you don't want to go anywhere. Also, check out the show notes. Hop on over to killerinnovations.com. We will have the show notes. We'll have the links mentioned here in today's interview with David, all there so that you can track down the information and get in contact. And with that, also, we're coming up on the kickoff for season 15, which will start March 5th. So if you've got anecdotes or stories, a number of you have been with the show since day one. I know a handful of you. Would love to hear from you on your thoughts on where we go for the next 15 years. So let us know. Drop me a note over at phil@killerinnovations.com. And with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, segment 4, 5 minutes to new ideas.
Back in the early days of this show, I would share what I called a killer question in each episode. These questions were designed to be used in your personal team or organization innovation efforts. Now, based on feedback from listeners like you, we've decided to bring it back with some improvements. Each episode of the Killer Innovations has a segment that I'm now calling 5 Minutes to New Ideas. They are designed for the creative mind looking for that next great idea. Each episode will challenge you to think differently about your business, your products, your services, and yourself by asking unique, funny, and sometimes crazy questions. These questions are designed to force you to look beyond the obvious and to uncover those ideas and opportunities you never before considered. So, get out your notebook and be ready to uncover that game-changing idea. Here is 5 Minutes to New Ideas. Magazine publishers are in the same predicament as the book publishing and recording industries before it. How do you keep your customers believing that your content is worth paying for when there is endless free content available on the internet? Some fashion magazines are experimenting with making their print issues feel like must-buy items. Bazaar and Elle both offer subscriber-only covers with edgier photography. Others, like the British style magazine ID, routinely print magazines with multiple collectible covers. There is a growing audience for boutique fashion magazines that have high-end cover prices and only come out once or twice a year, making them less like magazines and more like fashionable books. Other magazine publishers are looking at ways to monetize their back catalog of content. Condé Nast has an app that creates a customizable city guide for readers. The content on this app is based on existing articles. For instance, if you're planning a vacation to Italy, you'll get travel tips from Condé Nast Traveler, recipes to inspire you from Bon Appetit, fashion stories from Vogue, and a list of important buildings to see from Architectural Digest. Magazine publishers think of their assets as magazine titles, when in reality, their assets are the tens of thousands of articles that have been written over the years and published in titles like Traveler and others. So how do they continue to extract value from these old assets? Does your business have an equivalent backlog of information for experience that you could reshape into a current product? Condé Nast is a rare example of a publishing company that is actively looking to extract this value from their back catalog. Most publishers are still stuck in their old ways of how they've always done things. Those that are willing to experiment and try this repurposing will be the ones to discover the new areas of growth for their business. It's not a question of change happening 10 years from now. The revolution in magazine media is happening today, and choosing not to participate is just foolish. As is often the case, it is the people and companies who are in trouble and fighting for survival who are the boldest. Sometimes desperation is the key to getting you out of the rut. The first magazine to offer an iPad app wasn't Time or even Vogue, but Interview, which was a struggling, somewhat avant-garde New York culture magazine, who felt the cliff crumbling beneath their feet faster and caused them to become bold in order to try to fight that risk to the business. If everything seems like it's going to fall away beneath you, you have less to lose. And you're empowered to make riskier but possibly life-saving moves. I don't know if magazine apps will save Interview, but the fact that they tried demonstrates their willingness to evolve and fight for their survival. Turn your search inward. Can you recombine existing components to create new products for customers you don't currently serve? For example, are you making the assumption that your product needs to be sold as a whole single unit simply because that's how the manufacturing and distribution model works today? Ask yourself, could you provide your product components as individual pieces or in unique combinations? What new customers would that allow you to serve that you're not serving today? And again, what changes would this require in your business model? By combining and recombining your offerings, you may find a customer you never knew existed. I'm Phil McKinney, and thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join in. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. Beyond this show, I write about my personal experiences of being in the innovation game for the last 2 decades. Topics include innovation, creativity, culture, team building, metrics, frustrations, leadership, and how to win. You can find that content over at philmckinney.com. You can also find out information about my book, Beyond the Obvious, including extensive excerpts over at beyondtheobvious.com. You can find hardcover, digital, and audio versions of my book on Amazon or wherever you get your books from. Now, the reason I started this show back in 2005 was to pay back my early mentor. My first mentor, Bob Davis, invested an immense amount of time in training and coaching me, which had a major impact on my career. When I went back and asked him how I could pay him back, he laughed and said I couldn't. I had to pay it forward. If I could ask for a favor, could you help me pay it forward? How? 1, by giving us a rating wherever you get your podcast, as that helps spread the word. And 2, by telling others about the show. If you want to be part of the conversation between the shows, I hang out in the Innovators community on Slack. The Innovators community is a private community of vetted innovators who help each other succeed. Check it out at theinnovators.community. This episode of Killer Innovations was produced by the Innovators Network. You can find the show notes and the entire show catalog going back to 2005 at killerinnovations.com. I'll talk to you next week, and in the meantime, go out and change the world with your killer innovation. Bye-bye.